And so I have three takeaways there. I was brought up in a time where I was led to believe that suicide is not you are someone else. The hip hop artist Logic, that was his song playing before I got started. There's a suicide prevention lifeline. There's a number there that opens 24 hours a day. You can call it anytime. Write that down, maybe share it with someone, text it to someone. So know that resource is there. Also, the people that come up and present their testimony, they're going to talk about some specific things that they did and are still doing to cope, right? So
Like Professor Porter said, I'm Malaysia Alcorn. I'm a student here at Laney College. In 2014, I got my associates in restaurant management, and I went off and did that for a while. Then I came back and said, I want to transfer to a university. I want a little bit more. So I came back, took some more classes, and I should be transferring to East Bay to study something in the fall. I'm not really sure yet, but my education is very important to me. It's a priority to me at this point in my life. I'm a part-time student right now, and I work full-time for a nonprofit literacy organization here in Oakland, California, where I'm a volunteer coordinator. I'm from Oakland originally. I moved away for a while and came back, and I really love it here. So to start off, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be in front of all of you to talk a little bit about my story. Talk a little bit about it, because if I talked about the whole thing, we'd be here all night. But just to start off, I had a very tumultuous childhood. It was very rough, and I suffered a lot of trauma that I didn't even realize was trauma until I became a teenager and started to become an adult. It was just normal to me, and the word normal is always funny to me because normal is different for every single person. Like, normal to some people is like, oh, I was a kid, I went to Disneyland, and we went on family vacations, and we had family reunions. And then normal for me is like, oh, my mom would leave me at 9 years old with my brother for 3-4 days at a time, and we would eat top ramen for 2 weeks straight and things like that. And it's like, oh, it's no big deal. But once I got older and I started to see other people's normal, I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't normal. That actually was pretty bleeped up for me to have to go through a lot of the things that I went through. And even though when I got older, I got out of that situation, a lot of the pain and hurt and anger and questions that had no answers really lingered around. And when I got older, I'm like, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off at everybody in the situation. My parents, I'm pissed off at my younger brother who didn't have anything to do with it. I'm pissed off at my family that let this happen and never came and saved me, never came to help me, who just let me be in this messed up situation. I'm just angry at everyone. So when I became an adult, I isolated myself from my whole family. Like, I would go months without talking to them. I would go months without calling them. No tweets, no texts, no pigeons sent their way. I really was by myself. And then I thought, oh, if I'm by myself, I can start my life over and I'll be fine. And that was wrong, because when I isolated myself, it made me feel even worse. Like, okay, now I really have no one. I have no one to talk to. I have no one to tell anything to. I have no one to express my anger to. So I'm just sitting here festering, and I get angry and I get more upset. And then I get upset with myself. Like, well, you big dummy. If you wouldn't have isolated yourself from everyone, you would have someone to talk to. You would have someone in your corner. So all these things were brewing inside of me, and after a while, I became like a stone, a brick. Like, I just was numb to everything and so upset and angry at everyone in my life that had led me to this point and let me down. And I focused that on myself, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to be here. I would say to myself, like, I don't want to exist. I no longer want to breathe. I don't need to be in this world. I have no purpose, no reasoning, nowhere to be. I don't belong. And for a long time, I just kept that to myself. And then after a while, I had been in therapy for a few years, but I kept it real brief. People were like, oh, this is what happened on TV last night. This is what I ate for lunch. I never went to that next level with my therapist, because I'm like, okay, I don't know her, she don't know me, I don't want to get to know her, I really don't want to talk about this, I just want to bury it and leave it alone. But one day, I went into her office, and she's like, oh, how are you doing? And I just broke down. Such a simple question. I was like, I don't want to live, I don't want to be here, I'm tired, I feel like I have 30 boulders on my back. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just done with it. I'm fed up. I don't want to deal with any of this. Like, I need help, or I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And she was like, wow, I never knew that you felt like that. I never knew that you were going through that, because I hid it so well. I used to put a big smile on my face, and I would come to school, and I would go to work, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, you have such a great personality. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And then when I got home, I would lay in the bed for 10 hours, and I wouldn't eat dinner. I wouldn't cook breakfast. I wouldn't do anything. My house was a mess. I just would lay there because I was so depressed and so filled in my own pain and my own angst. And what she said afterwards always sticks with me, because she said, how painful it must have been for you to carry that around. And it was. It felt like every day I was stabbing my own self. I felt like I was just walking around the world with so much pain and so much heartache, and I would never let anyone know, and that made it worse when I thought that it would make it better. So long story short, but I ended up going to a facility in Northern California for teenage girls who have either attempted suicide, have suicidal thoughts, or may have almost died from suicide. And that really was a game changer for me. It helped me to realize that I'm not by myself, that there's other women and other girls and teenagers who go through what I go through. And being there taught me, like, okay, I could do this. Like, I don't have to feel like this. I don't have to be angry like this. I don't have to walk around feeling like the world has done something to me when it hasn't. You know, things happen in life. And a lot of the things that happened to me should not have happened to me, but it did. And there I was able to just kind of put life on pause and get myself together and focus on me and everything that I had going on. So there, I loved it there. I had a great time. I connected with the staff. I got to just kind of start over. But on my last day there, and they're like, okay, well, you're going to go back into the world, and, you know, you're going to keep living. And I was terrified, because how was I supposed to go back into a world that I wasn't even prepared to be in? Like, I never saw myself being, at 19, I didn't see myself being 20 or 21 or 22 or 23. I didn't see any of that. So how was I supposed to go into a world and live a life that I was super unprepared for? And it was hard. The first couple of months, it was hard. I just went to work, I went home, that was it. I didn't want to see anyone, I didn't want to talk to anyone, and then I noticed I was slipping back into my old self. So I decided, you know what? I'm gonna just start telling people what's going on with me. Because up until that point, I had told one person, my sister, and I didn't even go into detail with her, but I went from someone who was like, okay, I'm not gonna talk to anyone, to, hi, my name is Malaysia Alcorn, I have severe anxiety, I have clinical depression, and I've been through a lot of shit. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. But I've been through a lot of stuff. And I noticed that when I started saying that and started talking about it more, it comforted me. It made me feel better about what I've been through, where I was going. It just let everything out. I felt so light. I feel like I could float away and fly. It was really an amazing time for me to just tell people everything I went through and not hold it in and not feel like I had to carry all this weight around. And I met a lot of great people. I met a lot of wonderful people who went through the same things as me. And I go back to that facility that I went to twice a year to talk to them about what life is in the after. It's called Northern Gate. It's Northern Gate. Northern Gate, yes. So it's in Northern California, like in the Redding area. But anyways, I went there. I go back there every couple of times a year, and I talk to them. And I talk to them about what life is like in the after, because I'm living in the after. When you're having suicidal thoughts, or when you feel like you want to commit suicide, people, even afterwards, talk about the beginning and the during, but they never tell you how to move on in the after. So they tell you, like, oh, you should have talked to me, you should have called me, da, da, da. And then when you're like, okay, I'm moving past this, they're gone, and you don't talk to them anymore. And so you have to learn how to be strong in the after. You have to see people who are living in the after. Because if you don't see that, if you don't hear that, if you don't get to focus on that, then you won't have the ability to grasp it in real time. So I like to tell people that, my life isn't perfect. I don't have all these great things, but I'm alive, and I'm here, and I'm breathing, and that's amazing to me, and I love living here in the after.
Instead of facing it, he was up there to show us that we were all vulnerable and that this could happen to any of us. But he held on. He held on. And I'm so grateful that my homeboy held on. He's here today to tell us why he held on and to tell us how he held on and to give us some hope. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kevin Grateful.
Appreciate y'all coming out, man. This what's up, man. It's always good to be back in Oakland, man. I get the opportunity to travel now as being a suicide prevention advocate, but it's nothing like coming back home and being able to give back and be able to share my story in front of people that can really, really honestly relate. When I say I'm from Oakland, California, you guys understand, you get where I'm from, get what I'm saying. So the picture speaks for itself. It was March 11, 2005. I was 22 years old in this picture. I had basically given up on pretty much everything. When I woke up March 11, 2005, it was after I've battled undiagnosed clinical depression for about 22 years up until this point. How did I get to this point? I'll give you a small timeline. This started when I was about 5 years old. My adoptive mom told me that I was adopted early in life. The problem with this generated inside of me, I looked at myself in the mirror and I couldn't understand how somebody could give birth to me and just give me up. So automatically I questioned who I was, who I was in this earth, what was going on with me. I questioned everything. I hated everything about myself. From the ages of 5 to 8, for those 3 years period, I didn't even look in the mirror. When Steve Urkel was big back in the day, we all watched Family Matters. I used to have the Coke bottle glasses, so I hated the way I looked. I hated how I felt. I hated everything about myself. Elementary was pretty much, a cakewalk for me because I went to Grass Valley Elementary, which was in the hills. We had fun. We played tag. We was just pretty much, we was all, family-based, family-orientated, so everything was good for me as long as I had my adoptive parents, my mom and dad at home, and I had, everything was pretty much functioning for me. Even though I suffered at night, I cried at night a lot. I was okay during the daytime. I was functioning okay. Everything was good with me. But at night, that's when I had the problems. I used to just cry all night. Never knew why. Never, I just thought I was a crybaby. I mean, to be honest with you, I never really wanted to tell people because I didn't think nobody else would do it. I didn't think nobody else was up all night crying. I'm 5, 6, 7 years old. I mean, who else is doing this at 5, 6, 7 years old? I mean, I didn't know something was really wrong with me. I never identified. I never really wanted to accept it. I mean, you live in Oakland, California. You learn early in life. Your reputation is pretty much everything. So I shortly wasn't about to tell anybody that I was crying at night or had any emotions or a feeling. I knew even early in life that being adopted, I was lucky enough to be adopted. So I didn't want to tell my mom or dad anything of how I felt because I didn't want them to feel like I was ungrateful for being there. So everything I did was pretty much a lie. I lived my life making sure everybody knew that everything was okay with me, even though I've been broken inside for over 30-something years. But I wanted everybody to think that everything was okay with me. Pretty much everything changed for me in 1995, and that's when my parents divorced. This was pretty much my trigger because this was the same year that I went from elementary to junior high. Now, the jump, when you jump schools, it changes because I went from elementary school where we was running around playing tag, and now I'm entered into a junior high school where we was pretty much defending for our lives. So everything about me had to change. In the same year that my parents divorced was the same year I entered into a new school. So everything, my whole demeanor changed. Who I am changed. Everything clicked about me changed. And I began to build this front system guy. No matter what I was feeling on the inside, I never showed how I felt. I never would tell anybody how I felt. And I was good. People that know me, I was the life of everything. I was the life of the party. I was the class clown. I was the jovial guy. I was the one cracking the jokes. I was the popular one. I was everything. I mean, you could not tell that I had a problem in my life. And I wanted to make sure that you never question it. So I made sure that if you looked at me, you would never question I had a problem. You wouldn't see it. But I know every single day of my life I was struggling. I never wanted to identify it. I pretty much breezed through junior high and just, kind of got through the emotions. Same thing about high school. Pretty much just breezed through it. I didn't have any goals or aspirations in life. If you'd asked me in high school what I wanted to be when I grew up, I didn't know. I didn't think I was going to be an adult. 12th grade year came, I was trying to hold myself back because I was scared to enter into the real world. I had structure in high school. I was playing sports. I had family. I had friends. I had so many things to keep me busy that I didn't have to identify what was really wrong with me. I played, multiple sports growing up. It was always a practice. It was always a game. Always had something to do. I never had to have time to myself to really think about what was really wrong with me or really identify these things. And nobody around me, I knew nobody around me was struggling. I watched the Channel 2 news every single night. I didn't hear words about depression or mental health or anything like that, so I didn't even know I had a problem. I was just living on it, knowing that I know something was wrong with me, but I didn't want to talk about it to nobody. Who was I going to talk to about it? When I graduated high school, I had to make a decision. I knew I was out there in the real world. I wanted to make new decisions for myself. I was lucky enough that a soccer coach was looking at me in high school and offered me a scholarship to go to City College. Got out to City College, and I wanted different for my life because being from Oakland, I hadn't been to San Francisco about 2 times up until that day. I finally got out there, and started doing school, and I was starting to get upon my life. As soon as I got up on my life and started having feelings in my life, I got into a relationship, which was probably one of the worst things I could have did because I never had the time to take on my own problems. And as soon as I got into a relationship, I took on her problems. Now we created all these problems, and all these things start trickling inside of me. At 19 was my first suicide attempt. I was 19 years old. I was overwhelmed. I had just had a bad car accident about 4 months prior to that. But I got into a bad car accident. I was overdosed on medication, things like that. But about 6 months after that, I was involved with an argument with my girlfriend at the house. We got into it. It was my first real trigger signs of what I had to deal with suicide or anything like that. I was running out the house, grabbed a knife on my way out. On my way out, grabbed a knife. Police had to be called because my sister at the time, she's 8 years apart. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know, she's never seen me upset because that's how good I was. I've mastered being okay. I've mastered that everything is okay with me. So my sister, she had no idea what was wrong. What is Kevin doing outside? Running outside with a knife. She called the police. Police came out. I didn't, comply with them because for the first time in my life, when I held that knife to my throat when they found me, I felt powerful. I felt like I had, like I was in control of a situation. It may not have been a good situation, but I was in control. So I took advantage of that time right there of me being in control. I dictated what was going to happen in the next couple of minutes. 10 minutes went by, I didn't drop the knife, I was tased. So just to be honest with you, if anybody, the police tell you to drop a knife or anything, a gun or anything like that, please do. You never want to be tased. Worst possible feeling you can ever have. That was my first psychiatric evaluation. At 19 years old, I found myself being strapped down to a white metal bed. I got all these noises going on in the background, and I don't know why I'm here. The nurse and doctors keep coming in. They're running all these tests. They keep telling me about BPD and clinical depression and all these different things. Like I said, I've watched the news every single day. I've never heard depression. I've never heard mental health. I've never heard 5150. I've never heard suicide attempts. Lady, let me out of this thing. So they came running in. As soon as they came in, I told them to get out. That went on for days. I didn't know you had to comply in order to get out of this place. I just thought that, you can kick them out and they let you out. But that wasn't the case. I was in there 10 days. Finally, I got home, and, I went to outpatient for my mom. I went to an outpatient program. It was supposed to be a 6-week program. I ended up being in that program for 2 years. From the ages of 19 to 21, I tried to talk about my problems. I tried to do everything that they wanted me to do, open up, make myself vulnerable. In those 2 years, I went through 6 different therapists who prescribed me 6 different medications. I immediately at that time knew why people like me never wanted to go get help, because there wasn't no help. At least that's what I thought at the time. Every single therapist made me feel like I was stupid. Every single therapist made me feel like I should be over my childhood issues. In that time of them prescribing me 6 different medications, they had stuff that had my mood all over the place, stuff that had my weight all over the place, things that had me all over the place. In that 2-year span, I had another 9 suicide attempts, back and forth on that medication, things that people don't really know about. In that 2-year span, in my eyes, I went 0 to 19 with 1 attempt. I had one bad day where I happened to grab a knife, and I was doing okay with not handling my problems. As soon as I try to open up and handle my problems, now all these different things I'm vulnerable and I'm susceptible to. So when I turned 21, I told myself, I got all my medication that day, dumped it in the toilet, took myself off medication, and I'm going to go back to doing what I do best. I'm going to get busy with life and not handle my problems, because that was the best thing to do. Handling my problems would put me in this position anyway. That's what I did. Got back into school, got back onto the soccer team, got back working 2 jobs, got back busy. got back busy. If I don't have time to worry about my problems, then they don't exist. That was my mentality. Don't be busy enough to where you don't have to worry about them. That was the only thing that was going to penetrate me and stop me. My whole entire life, I've always tried to fill this void on the inside of me. One thing that I felt like I hadn't been a failure at that time, up until that point, this was 2003, is I wanted to one day be a father. I always told myself, you bring a child into this world, maybe it'll be different for me. Maybe this will fill this void that I've always wanted to fill. I mean, it would be the one person I bring into this world that doesn't see me as I see myself. I mean, because I really hate everything about me up until this point. But maybe she'll see the love in me. Maybe she'll love me for everything that I don't see. Or maybe he or she at the time. But, so I reunited with an ex-girlfriend at the time. We ended up having a baby, planning the baby, whatever you want to call it. And my daughter was supposed to be born July 23rd of 2004. She came April 6th, which is a significant amount of early, She came premature. So that moment where, the baby comes out, that moment I was waiting for, when the baby comes out and, they clean the baby up and they hand it to the parents. You guys look at your baby with that awe and that expression. That was the moment I was banking on that was going to change everything that was wrong in my life. The adoptions, the divorce, the me, my biological mom, the turmoil in that, me, my biological dad, and the turmoil in that. Everything that was wrong in my life, I banked on when my baby come out, it was going to be this magical moment. But when your child's premature, you don't get that magical moment, When she came out, they whisper away. Next time I saw her, she was 2 floors above me in a glass incubator. Now, I've always in my life felt like a failure. I've been feeling like a failure since I was 5 years old, but never so much in that moment when I looked down at my daughter in this glass incubator. She pretty much got a tube to feed, a tube to breathe, a tube pretty much for everything. Now, in the time frame of my life, I probably needed to talk to somebody probably every day of my life about my problems, but I didn't. But when I really, really needed somebody the most was in that 8 weeks that I had to watch her be up at that hospital. See, I didn't have the type of job where I could be by her bedside and watch her get it together. I had the type of job where I had to go to work and come back and hope that somebody was going to be by her bedside to mind for her. Every day that I left and had to come back, a part of me died. Literally, as I walked to the car at Alta Bates, a part of me died. Pieces of me were dying each and every day. By the time I got to the point where it was time to bring her home, I was already too far gone. I only had 10 days of pure bliss to where I enjoyed her being home. I was changing diapers, had bottles. I got 10 days of bliss. It was only 10 days of my life where I've had peace of mind in my whole entire life, where I wasn't living a lie or living a front for the world. In those 10 days, everything was bliss. Everything was great. Everything was fantastic. And I remember after that 10 days, and on a Thursday afternoon, I kissed my daughter on the way going out. It was the first time in my life I looked at life, and I said to myself, maybe life ain't so bad. I mean, I've always said life is horrible. Life is this, man, I don't want to be here. For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe it's not so bad. Went out and checked the mail. It was about 6 pieces of mail. It was about 5 bills, bill. I ain't paying that. But it was just one thick manila envelope. And I opened it up. It was insurance. And apparently it costs for your daughter to have, stay at Alta Bates. And she didn't have, like I said, she wouldn't have one of those platinum rooms or anything like that. Regular room, but somehow this bill totaled up to $250,000. I mean, I thought to myself, a couple $1,000, I could work out a payment plan, but I didn't have a payment plan for $250,000. Not when I just tried to figure out how, I'm just out learning how to be, a dad. I'm still trying to learn who I am, like to come up with, $250,000. My grandfather always told me 2 things: protect and provide. I already knew I couldn't provide. I already knew I couldn't protect because, she's already, in this incubator. Now I've already lost the to provide part because $250,000, how am I going to come up with this? I felt like the biggest failure in the world. But at least I got my job. At least, it's post office job. I'm a casual, but I could probably work out a payment plan. Maybe if I pay $250 for the rest of my life, we could figure out something. Maybe it can work. That's what I was under depression. But I also put in a transfer because we grew up in Oakland. We all grew up. You want better for your kids. So I put in a transfer at my job. They didn't really pretty much like the transfer. So 12 days after me finding out I had $250,000 worth of debt, I got laid off. Now, it wasn't the fact that I'm laid off and now I can't pay my bills. It's the fact that I lost my job. Here's the important part about my job. I purposely picked the post office because it keeps you busy enough to where I'm working 10, 12 hours a day to where I don't have to worry about life. That's the whole purpose of having a job. October 2004 was the first time in my life I wasn't working. I wasn't going to school. None of the things that I had to cope with my whole life that I was using to not deal with my life, I didn't have. It was the first time in my life I hit rock bottom, and it was the first time in my life I had to handle and deal with every emotion it was right here in my face. Christmas was coming, Christmas holiday, kid holiday. Kids forget their birthday, and they remember Christmas. I knew I couldn't afford a present. It's our first birthday. It's our first Christmas. How was I going to, forget I can't afford a present? I felt like the biggest loser ever. 2005 came around, my New Year's resolution was not to be alive. February 2nd came and I was still alive. I had to figure out a plan. My mom's birthday is February 15th. I said if I could just be around for her birthday, if I could just be here for her birthday. Picked her up on her birthday, February 15th. She didn't even realize that I was saying goodbye after that night. I was saying goodbye, dropped her off, went down the hill, threw my phone out the window. I met a girl 3 weeks prior to that was from East Palo Alto. Never been to East Palo Alto in my life. Went out there, stayed with her because I knew nobody would know where I was at. Lost all contact with family and friends. That was February 15th, 2005, a month before this day. Now, in those 30 days, the next 30 days, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I had no contact with family, I had no contact with friends, I had no contact with my daughter, who meant pretty much everything with me. I was displaced from everything, and when I woke up March 11, 2005, it was pretty much I woke up with every problem in my life that I did not face. Every problem from the time that I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, everything that I thought that it would just go away, that I thought that it didn't exist, I felt in that moment. And I said, I got to do something. I got to get out of this pain. Got in my car. Instantly at that moment, I thought about the Golden Gate Bridge. Here's what's ironic. I didn't even know the Golden Gate Bridge was iconic for suicide attempts. I'm from Oakland, California. I didn't even know how to get to the Golden Gate Bridge. I got to ask for directions. But I was banking on whoever I asked, maybe if I asked them, they'll look at me and say, man, you should know how to get to Golden Gate Bridge. Why are you going there? Because honestly, I was ready to talk. I was ready to say why I was going. I said, maybe I'll ask people at the Bay Bridge. Because they'll tell me, the toll taker, you got to ask her, So I'll pull up, give her my money, and ask for the Golden Gate Bridge. She never even looked at me. She gave me directions, and I was on my way. 25 minutes later, I'm at the bridge. Park my car, get out, park right there, leave the keys in the ignition, grab my prepaid phone. I get out there, I make one phone call, they didn't answer the phone. I get to the spot where I know it's going to be good, look over the railing. I see nothing's going to stop me. Nothing's going to deter me. I take a couple steps back, and I'm ready to impact. My last brain of thought is, I'm about to hit this water, and I don't have to worry about waking up tomorrow. See, prior to this day, I've had to wake up every single day and try to figure out how I'm going to get through this day. I've hated every single moment of my life. I hated my reflection. I've hated my skin. I've hated everything about me up until this moment. And I knew that I failed at being a father. I failed at being a friend. I failed at being a son. I failed at being just everything. And in this moment, I knew that everything had to change. I had to end this. Life would be so much better if I wasn't around. That's what I thought. As I began to prepare myself and I go towards the railing, I literally leaped the railing, and as I'm leaping the railing, I hear a voice. This voice is that of Sergeant Officer Briggs, who I didn't even know was a cop at the time. We don't even really know too much what he said, but it's distracted me enough to where I grabbed the railing and turned myself around on this cord. Now, see, this cord that I'm standing on is the only place on the bridge that has a cord for me to stand on. If I would have jumped off any part of the other bridge, any part of the bridge, it didn't have this cord. I would have instantly hit the water. But somehow I put myself in this position, and I'm upset because anybody that knows me, there's only two things I hate. I hate being cold, and I hate heights. This is March in San Francisco. Right. This is March in San Francisco. It's 45 degrees. I got shorts and a T-shirt on, and I'm 220 feet in the air. This officer is still trying to get he's trying to get my attention, but I keep my head down the whole time. At any moment, I can just let go. There's nothing that's holding me on. I'm not holding on with either arm. There's nothing that's sustaining me. 135 pounds in this photo. All I got to do is just let back. And I keep telling myself, Kevin, all you got to do is let go. Everything is done. You're done. Everything is gone. But for some reason, as this voice is keep talking to me, and for some reason it's circulated in my heart. Why does he even care? And the more and more I allowed him to come closer, we start gaining a conversation. Here's the important part about my story. For 92 minutes, look at this photo. For 92 minutes, I stayed in the same position on the Golden Gate Bridge while traffic stopped, helicopter in my back, everything at a standstill for 92 minutes. Some people can't even stand still for 5 minutes. Think about that. 92 minutes, I stayed in the same position. At any moment, I could have slipped, fell, anything. In 89 of those minutes, Officer Briggs just listened to my story. He listened to 17 years up until that point of everything that I went through, everything that I tried to tell the therapist, everything that I wanted to tell my mom, adoptive mom, biological mom, adoptive dad, biological dad, everything that I wanted to tell everybody, he learned in that 17 years. An officer who I never even took the time to look up and knew that he was white or anything about him. That's how powerful the powerful of connection is and how important it is that we got to listen to each other. That's how I got to this point. I didn't take care of me. I didn't take care of issues. I grew up in the 90s in Oakland where we was stigmatize ourselves. We grew up thinking that it couldn't happen to us. So I never talked about suicide or depression because I didn't even know what it was. And if I did, I still probably wouldn't have talked about it because nobody that looked like me looked like they were affected by this. Not one person that I went to school with looked like they were dealing with what I was dealing with. And we all were probably dealing with the same thing, because if I was lying about who I was, who else was? That's why it's so important to just be who you are. No matter what you're dealing with in life, there's help. There's nothing you ever been through in your life that you're the only person that you're dealing with it by yourself. Impossible. I went to New York in 2013. After I went to the bridge, after this day happened, I went to a psychiatric evaluation hospital for 15 days. After I got out of there, I got home, my mom showed me that this picture was front page of the San Francisco Chronicle. I immediately denied this picture. I immediately denied depression. I immediately denied everything. Why? Because I didn't take ownership to who this was. I never said this was me that went to the bridge. The part that hurt me the most is now I can't go back to being who this person is. See, when I look at that picture, that don't look like the life of the party. As I was trying to make it seem like I wanted everybody to look at me as the life of the party, as the jovial guy, Kevin that had it all together. Now when they see that picture, that don't look like Kevin that had it all together. I spent my whole life building this guy to make it seem like he had it all together, just for one day for it to all go away. I told my mom, we're not dealing with this day. We're not dealing with anything that got to do with this day. We're not dealing with mental health. So no, after this dramatic day, I didn't go talk to no counselor. I didn't go talk to no therapist. I didn't go get on medication. I went 8 years of still in denial. And it's a wonder why I'm still standing in front of you, because I still denied it. I still didn't accept it. I still didn't take the time and say, Kevin, you still have a problem and you need help. I still lied. I still did everything like it was normal, because I didn't want to accept that I had this. I didn't want to accept that I was Kevin Berthia, I was from Oakland, California, and I have depression. That didn't go right. There's nothing about me that says that I had depression, not when I built my whole life on happiness, on jokes, on playing around. I'm not going to accept this. And for 8 years, I didn't. And if it wasn't for my mom writing a letter to Officer Briggs that he kept, I wouldn't even have the opportunity to go to New York, where I had the opportunity to talk for the first time about this day, March 11, 2005. I talked back in 2013 openly about this day, and that was the day that changed my life. Because after I spoke in New York, I remember I came down and I talked to a lady, and she's the reason why I really learned about being an advocate. Because after I spoke to her, she said, I haven't slept in 5 years. This is what she said. She said, thank you for telling me your story. I haven't slept in 5 years. My son committed suicide 5 years, and I haven't slept in 5 years a night. But I'll sleep tonight because of hearing your story, I can better understand what he was dealing with. The worst moment of my life, the worst day of my life, that just gave somebody hope. That's when I knew immediately that there's power in this testimony. There's power in your pain. There's power in the things that you go through if you get them out and talk about them. Because somebody needs to hear how you got through. Somebody needs to hear that you had to go through a suicide. You had to go through a attempt. You had to go through these different things, that you had a death in your family, that you got to go through this, and you got to, how are they going to know that they can make it if they didn't know that you made it? It's important to share your story. That's why I share mine. It makes me vulnerable. Yeah, when I get up here and I talk about March 11, 2005, I got to go back to that day. I can't speak to you from today, October 18, 2017. I got to go March 11, 2005, so I got to feel the wind. I got to feel everything like I'm at that day. Why? Because it's important for you to know that it can happen to you, and that it can happen to any of us, and that's why we got to get help. We got to do everything. We got to break down all stigmas, and start today. Like, now that you've come here and you realize how important it is, it starts. You're not the same now. Now that you've learned both of our stories, you can really see that it starts with us. Turn off the TVs, turn off the news, stop paying attention to all that stuff, and realize that the change happens with us. It starts with you sharing your story, for one. Because it's things that everybody in this person has been through. We all been through hell in this room. There's nobody that's exempt. There's nobody in this room that never had a bad day or never have a painful moment. You've had a painful moment. You've had a horrible day. Just nobody has a picture of it. It would be your story. This would be your story. So I'm no different than nobody else. I'm no different. Yeah, I get to travel. I get to go here. But I'm no different. I'm just like you. I was lied to thinking that this couldn't happen to me. That this doesn't happen to black people. This doesn't happen to, I was lied to too. It can happen anywhere. I've done research, I've done the numbers. It's touched every area of this world has been hit by suicide. Every nationality. So it touches everybody. So we're all affected as long as we share in this world and as long as we breathe the same. So our differences is what makes us whole. Remember that everything you do, you have the power to help. We're all superheroes and we're all first responders. That's what makes us powerful. What saved my life was 2 ears and a heart. Not a first responder that had accolades. No, he was human. You could have sent me anybody and they wouldn't have saved my life. Anybody. You could have sent me my mama and she wouldn't have saved my life that day. Because it wasn't about that. I needed a certain type of compassion. It's the same thing that we all have. We all have it. Reach out to people. Change people, help people, encourage people. Simple hellos. You're not going to be able to solve people's problems. Officer Briggs showed up that day. He couldn't solve 22 years of my problems. You're not going to be able to solve people's problems. The best thing you can do for people, sometimes support is going to be silent. It's going to be silence. It's going to be you listening to them. Because that's what saved my life. I'm here before you. I stand before you. I've been able to have kids. I've been able to travel. I get to do everything I get to do because somebody took the time to simply listen to me. Handle your issues, people. Whatever you're dealing with, there's help. I represent America's Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There's chapters in every state of this country. There's help. There's numbers. There's text numbers. There's so much help for you. Whether you look like me, whether you don't look like me, it don't matter. So my challenge today is for you to really just get help. Like the suicide awareness, it starts with us. I'm tired of losing people. The numbers are astonishing. If you look up the numbers, you'll be blown away. 1 every 40 seconds, worldwide. That'll blow you away right there. Get involved in this. Help me get involved in this. Raise the awareness. Do whatever we can to detect this stuff early. This is not just my problem. It's all our problem. The things you see on the news, that's mental health. I became an advocate because I see the danger of the world. I see what the world is in, the chaos of what the world is in. Our world. Do whatever you can. I appreciate your time and I thank you for listening. Thank you.
We're going to transition into a question and answer segment. If you have a question, just let me know. Go straight to the question. Does anyone have any questions for Grateful or Malaysia? Yes, ma'am.
Just this week, there was a young man on Facebook who was one of the few survivors of jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. I think 2,000 people, and he's one of 3 or 4 people.
I'm kind of familiar with him.
I bet you are. And what he said was so interesting. He said that as soon as he let go, he regretted doing it. But there was no turning back. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I tried to kill myself about 8 years ago. And then my best friend did kill herself about 4 years ago. And the only difference between the two of us is that I asked for help and she wouldn't accept help.
There's a question that says, what should a parent do if they recognize depression in a child?
I'll take it on. You gotta. First of all, as a parent, it's extremely difficult, and you gotta be able to try to separate feelings because you go into it with all these feelings, and you gotta be able to separate and for the well-being of the child. First thing you want to do is so many different things you can do for help. You want to be able to find a good therapist. You want to be able to find some type of outlet for that child that he or she can be able to talk to, some type of comfort zone. Because you got to pay attention. You know your kids, and you know when they do things, and you know when they're going through different things, and they're expecting you to pay attention to their warning signs. When you pay attention to these things, and as soon as you see these warning signs, you got to act. You got to make sure they know that you're there for them. Constantly positive energy. My mom, she didn't even know that I was struggling so much as a kid, but she stacked me with so much positive energy, and it helped me so much. the positive reinforcement, just constantly positive, just hey, how's everything doing? Just constantly, I love you, and you're good enough, and just constant flows of positivity, because it's a dark time. It's a difficult time for parent, and it's a difficult time for child. But you got to find a common ground, so you both can get help. Both of you guys really need help. When you're dealing with a child with depression, you need help to deal with what you're dealing with, and the child need help as well. So.
I don't have any kids, but I did have parents that noticed that something was wrong with me, and when I was adopted as well, and my adoptive parents, they were like, okay, we know you've been through this trauma, this X, Y, and Z. I want you to see a therapist. And I went to therapy, and they tried, everything that they could. They're like, okay, we'll go to see a therapist. We'll get you into sports. I hated sports. And they kept doing these textbook things that they felt like they should be doing. Okay, I'm going to get my daughter into sports. I'm going to have her see a therapist. She's going to go to these weekend retreats. And they thought that was going to help me. But all I really wanted was someone to be like, you know what? How are you doing? What's going on with you? Instead of forcing me in to do things that they felt were correct, it would have been a lot more helpful for them to just to ask simple questions, just to say, how are you doing? How do you feel about everything that's going on? But instead of talking to me, they talked around me, and they talked to other people about me. And so for 3-4 years in therapy, I was shooting the breeze with the therapist, like she was my friend. Like, oh, I bought a new purse today. I just got a new pair of shoes. I'm about to go see this movie. It was nothing deep. It was nothing past the surface, because I'm like, I don't want another adult to talk about me and whisper about me in corners and things like that. So I'm just going to sit here and say whatever, just so this hour can go by and do whatever. And I don't blame them for doing all these things, because that's what they truly felt would help me. But a lot of the times you need to ask deeper questions. Don't stay on the surface. Don't just say, oh, how was school today? Say, how do you feel? You seem like you're really down lately. What's going on with you? And asking questions like that could really help your children to feel more comfortable with you and just let it out one day.
I want to go back to something that you said about the one day when you just really opened up to your therapist. Was there something that triggered that? Did she take a different approach on this day? What was it about that day when you opened up and just told her everything?
At that point, it wasn't a trigger from her. She didn't say anything out the norm. It's just I had been up for maybe 3 or 4 days at that time. I hadn't slept. Every time I would fall asleep, I would have a nightmare and jump right back up. And I was I think I honestly was just so exhausted. I didn't have the energy to fight myself anymore. I'm just I'm so tired. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to feel all these emotions, and I'm just exhausted. And I had skipped a couple therapy sessions, because at that point I was supposed to see her 3 times a week, but I had skipped 2 times that week. And so I was just exhausted. I had almost gotten into an accident on my way to the office. I was just literally, physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. And I feel like with that, I was able to let my guard down around myself. And when she just asked me, how are you feeling today? I was like, I'm about to tell you how I'm feeling today. And I just let it all out. And it was so much. She'd been a therapist for almost 30 years. And she was like, I never had someone just give me the rundown like that and from a simple question. And she almost was shocked. I couldn't believe this girl that I had been seeing for almost 3 years now just had all this inside of her. And just referring back to what she said how painful it must have been for me to walk around with all that. And it was painful. And when I finally let my guard down and finally just exhausted my own self with everything that I had going on, it was a lot easier for it to just come out before I could think about it, before I could say I'm not going to talk about it, before I could hold it in anymore. I just let it all out. And it felt good.
For me, I just stepped into ownership of who I am in 2013. So up until that point, I never accepted depression at all. So I didn't, and most of the reason why I didn't accept it was because where I come from, it didn't exist. So that played probably the biggest, you know, role as far as me wanting to create everything, keeping everything inside. I mean, because I was adopted, but I had two parents, right? I lived in the hills. Both parents had jobs. I didn't have a reason to feel the way I felt. Like I watched my friends. I went to friends' house. They didn't have groceries. They didn't have all the things that I had. I had a full stock refrigerator. I had everything at my disposal. I never needed or wanted anything. I never, you know. So I didn't have a reason to feel the way I feel, to be so empty. So that was, you know, that I've been my own stigma, you know. So it hasn't been the world. It's been me, because I've never felt like I deserved to feel the way I felt. So, you know, culturally, now that I've accepted who I am, now I look at it, now I got to deal with accepting that people don't accept it because they don't believe that it exists because they're black. Now I got to transform so many different minds because of that, because of the cultural norm of people think that, oh, it's just systematic or it's just it. No, it's not. It's everything. We all have to deal with this. So, you know, that's just my tidbit on it.
It's just crazy to me because me and Kevin's background is very similar. I was adopted later in life, so I was adopted when I was like 9 years old. And up until that point, like I said before, everything I had been through was very normal to me. It wasn't like, this is crazy, I'm living in madness, I'm living in chaos. I'm like, this is just normal. This is like my regular day. I had what you call functional drug addict parents. You know, like they for like 10 months out the year, they were great. They did everything right, wonderful parents. You know, they would go to jail every once in a while. They would leave me for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, but, you know, someone would always come in and check on me, grandmother, whatever. And then when I got adopted, I had 2 parents, and they knew my birth parents. So at that time, it really was like I had 4 parents. So I had my 2 birth parents, I had my 2 adopted parents, and through all that support and love and whatnot, I still fell through the cracks because it wasn't about them. It wasn't about what they were doing at that point. It was about the damage that was already done. And like Kevin said, for a long time I felt like I don't need to be depressed about this. This is old news. I'm 18 now and graduated high school. I have the opportunity to go to college. Everything's good now. I don't need to worry about these old stresses. I don't need to worry about any of that. And one thing that the culture tells you a lot of times is that, especially I grew up in this generation where social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all that is new, it's coming out. Social media is a big thing. And the culture tells you that everybody is great. Everyone's having a great day. They eating biscotti and coffee in Paris, and life is wonderful. She just got a new car. They just bought a new house. Life is wonderful. So this is at a time when nobody was on Facebook like, oh, you know what, I'm really sad today. No one was like, oh, feeling kind of moody today. Everyone was like, oh my God is real. I just got into this college. I just did X, Y, and Z. Everything was just like so uplifting. So I was like that on social media. I'm on Facebook like, oh yeah, I just got a new puppy. I just got a new job. All this while I'm like literally dying inside. I'm literally going through life feeling the worst I had ever felt, just from all these things that had happened to me before that just really came to the surface as I got older. And I didn't tell most of my friends that I had in high school and in college when I went to Laney didn't even know I was adopted. They didn't even know that I had been through all these things. They didn't even know that my parents did X, Y, and Z. I just didn't tell anyone that because I'm like, I'm just not going to bring it up because I don't want people to lose this facade of me. I don't want them to think that Malaysia isn't okay, that she's not living this great life, that she's not doing great by herself and all these things. So a lot of them didn't even know these things about me. So who could I tell? It's not something you could just work into a conversation after you've known someone for like 5 years. Like, oh, I know I never mentioned this before, but my parents, those aren't my parents. These are my adopted parents because my parents were on drugs and in and out of jail. So it's like, who could I go and tell that? Because they're going to look at me like, I never knew that. It would be a crazy moment, and the people around me were just as fake as I was. They wanted to be happy, and, oh, I'm doing great, I got a car, I got a degree, and so I just fell in with that. But if one of them would have showed me a crack in themselves, I would have shown them the cracks in myself, and we both could have healed each other. But it wasn't like that. So the culture really, it could be funny. Now it's a little different. People do the most craziest things on Facebook, like suicides happen live on Facebook. It's a very different type of culture. So you could go on there and say, what, I feel crazy today, I don't feel good. And you could say things like that now. But back then it was like, no, you either gonna post your Starbucks and your dog, or you're gonna keep it to yourself.